And just like that, the National Duels Invitational bracket is set. The seeds are set. And now we're just 5 short weeks away from the action getting going in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I wanted to talk to you today about the seeding process for the National Duels Invitational. And I have a unique perspective because I was lucky enough to be asked to be on the seeding committee. It was a 3-person committee. It was myself, Willie Saylor, and Jason Kosenki. And the 3 of us were tasked with coming up with and coming together with the top 4 seeds, right? And before we get into that process, I just want to mention, I really like only seeding 4. I think it was considered actually maybe only seeding 2 at a point, but I think seeding 4 allows, and I think Matt Serber alluded to this, but when you only seed 4, the potential for chaos and very interesting first round matches is very, very high. And I think that's exactly what this process yielded, right? The first round is going to be incredible. There's some amazing duels there. And you still accomplish the idea of separating the top 4 teams, and really you want to separate those top 2 teams. And I think we did just that. So the way it worked, Matt Serber organized all this, and he said, hey, when we come to this meeting, this seeding meeting, have your ideas in mind where you're feeling like we should seed this 1 through 4. And so we all kind of had our own homework, and we all had our own process for how we kind of arrived at who should be where. And so the way I was thinking about it was like, you seed individual tournaments all the time. You rank, individual weight classes all the time. But seeding a team dual tournament is sort of a unique thing. I've never been a part of that. There aren't many tournaments like that where they actually get seeded. And that's what we were tasked with. So, I have my own issues with the NCAA seeding process, but one thing that I like that they do that I think is actually more applicable for a team versus team sort of scenario when you're trying to seed is the matrix, where you simulate basically everyone against everyone else. And on an individual level, the way they do that, I'm not as firm or not as in favor of that process. But from a dual meet standpoint, seeding and simulating every team versus every team is actually doable, and it actually yields something I think really meaningful. So it was obviously very manual. There's 16 teams, and I seeded every combination. I think that's 120 dual meets I simulated. And I understand that not every team was really probably ever going to be considered for that top 4, but I just thought it was important. I thought hey, you never know if maybe a team that's the 12th best team, but they match up really well against an Iowa or Nebraska or Oklahoma, whatever. I just wanted to leave no stone unturned. So I simulated all of them. And it played out basically how you would expect it would play out. The top dogs were Nebraska, Iowa, Oklahoma State, Ohio State, NC State, Virginia Tech, Minnesota, and a couple other tough teams, Lehigh, Michigan, all in that mix. And so the way I did it, and we took the individual rankings for Intermat and for FloWrestling, okay? Because, I work for FloWrestling. I think our rankings are great. They're obviously very trusted. And similarly, Intermat, a long-standing brand, a long-standing ranker of college wrestling. So it felt like looking at those was, getting really good perspective. So then, and this was the key element, and this is what I think really helped us more than anything to get this right, is we got the coaches were helpful, and they didn't say, hey, this is our starting lineup guaranteed, but they gave us a framework to work with. Hey, here's our 2 deep probably, and they didn't include people that aren't going to be there. A prime example and one where the seeding really is important is Nebraska's 149. Now, if they had Chance Lamer, they'd be favored to win that, but Nebraska was forthright and said, hey, he's transferred in, he's going to be available second semester. We're not going to have him in the first semester. And that's really helpful information as you're trying to, there is a lot of guesswork in this, and coaches can be cagey, and I understand why. But for this purpose, it really, I think all the level of detail we got was really, really helpful in figuring out that top 4. So I simulated every dual meet. I already mentioned that. We have great cooperation in figuring out who's going to be where broadly. There's no guarantees. It's wrestling, right? Injuries happen. Some guys will emerge as starters, but we have broad stroke understanding of who's going where, and that's really important. Okay, so I won't talk about every single dual meet result. Let's talk about the big ones, because the initial conversation is, wait, Iowa ahead of Nebraska. Why is that? Because you look at FloWrestling's team rankings, you look at Intermat's team rankings, and Nebraska is ahead of Iowa in both. But two things to consider. One, those are tournament rankings, which, as we know, and the reason duels are beautiful and awesome is a tournament and a duel are very, very different things. And there's different things that can lead to winning a tournament that don't necessarily lead to winning a dual meet. So that's one thing to consider. But the main thing to consider, why Iowa was ahead of Nebraska, was 149 and no chance slammer. And so when you look at this breakdown, and you can do this homework just as easy as I can on Intermat or Flow or however, Iowa wins 5 matches of the duel by ranking. Who's ranked higher? I'm not going to get into predictions. I think if I start predicting Chris Minto over Patrick Kennedy or Kayla Ritson over Dean Peterson, I'm not doing my job. It's not my job to predict or project. It's our job as a seating committee to look at this, indifferently, right? With no bias or preference or who we think is going to win. It's like, no, what does the data say right now in October of 2025? And so Iowa, by rankings, they would win 25-33. So that's Dean Peterson over Kayla Ritson. That's Drake Ayala over Jake Van D. That's Michael Caliendo over LJ Araujo. And at 74, Patrick Kennedy over Chris Minto. And 84, Angelo over Silas Allred. Now, those are all debatable matches, who would win, who wouldn't, but there's no debate on who is ranked higher right now today in those weight classes. Nebraska wins 41-57, 97, and 285. That's Brock Hardy, that's Antrell Taylor, that's Camden McDaniel, and AJ Ferrari. And there's one push. Iowa is unranked at 149. Nebraska is unranked at 149. And now, did we have a tie-breaking criteria if push came to shove? Yes, we did. It didn't come down to it in this case. It's 5-4 Iowa with a push. And that ultimately put Iowa over Nebraska. Nebraska, that's the only dual meet in the simulation they lost. They beat Oklahoma State. They beat Ohio State. Ohio State beat Oklahoma State in the simulation. And that's how we came up with it. And it's fun to talk about this stuff. Obviously, I liked doing it. It was my honor to get to participate in it. And I'm giving you the cliff notes. We all came in with our own ideas, and then we put it all together. We talked about it, and I feel like everyone really contributed and helped to get to a good result where we certainly separated the top 2 teams, at least on paper. I think we got the top 4 exactly how they should be seated. And I'm excited to be a part of this. The National Duels Invitational is going to be amazing. And that's just a little peek behind the curtain of the seeding process. It was fun to be part of it. I think we got it right, but I want to hear from you. What do you think about these seeds? Iowa 1, Nebraska 2, Ohio State 3, Oklahoma State 4. What are your thoughts?